name is Nate Johnson, and welcome to the Criterion Collection Reviews Into the Shadow. That's a horrible Hitchcock. Forget it. We're not going to do that anymore. No, we're not going to go down that road anymore. Not going to be, weight loss. Anyway. Hello, Nate Jackson, Criterion Collection Reviewer Guy, persons of the sort. Finally, with our little, finally getting down to our little, Hitchcockapalooza of sorts. It's Criterion releasing 3 Hitchcock movies in a row. I mean, we've already had, The Lady Vanishes and, that other one. That other one that I'm sure that I'm kicking myself for not remembering what it was. Oh, well, I'll remember it probably by the end of this review. Or I'll remember it for next time. Anyway, so, number 135, Rebecca. Oh god, Criterion, I know you love your goddamn supplements, but this took all fucking day for me. I swear, this is complete bullshit. Oh my god, all these goddamn supplements. Alright. Okay, so but first, let's talk about the movie. 130 minutes, 1940, based on a book by Daphne du something or other, Daphne du Maurier. Starring Joe Fontaine, Laurence Olivier, Judith Anderson, I think. I don't remember. And they do have the booklet. I can refer to the credits. I never even bothered to look at this actually. George Sanders, Judith Anderson. I'm not no. So let's talk about the movie. Let me just give you the synopsis of the movie, which I had to experience this story at least 19 times or 4 or 5 times today. So we have the main character played by Joan Fontaine, whose name is never given. In the credits and throughout the the supplements, the character is referred to as I, because in the novel it's in the first person, and so she never reveals her name. And I gotta be honest with you, that's really, I don't know, I think that can be kind of stupid sometimes. I mean, I guess it's not stupid that, that they didn't name her in the movie, and only because they didn't name her in the book. Daphne du Maurier did not name the character, so it's fine that they don't want to name her for the movie. In fact, if they gave her a name for the movie, that'd be kind of blasphemy, to try and give a name to someone that, the author didn't believe needed a name or anything like that. But, write yourself a goddamn name, Miss du Maurier, or whatever your name is. Do whatever. Yeah. So basically, we got the main character, whom, like I said, should be called I, but I'm not calling her I. That's BS. Because, yeah. So, I'm going to call her Joan Fontaine, because that's the actress who played her, Joan Fontaine. Joan Fontaine meets Laurence Olivier's character at the top of this cliff. He looks like he's going to jump, but he yells at her to run away and all that. So she runs back to her she's employed by this, really snooty old woman, whose name is Mrs. Van Hopper, who's kind of a hired friend. She describes her. Fontaine describes herself as a hired friend, I think. And so later on, they have lunch together, and they meet the man that she saw earlier, who is revealed to be Maxim de Winter. He's a widow who lives in this manor, Mandalay. And he ends up becoming attracted to her, and so they end up dating and seeing each other quite a bit. And she ends up running away with him, and when lying to Mrs. Van Hopper that she's going to tennis practice when she's actually running away with De Winter. As many times as I've heard these names throughout the story, I still have to refer to these. And so they end up getting married, and so she tells Mrs. Van Hopper, and so that they go off and get married, and so she comes to the manor, and she ends up meeting the whole staff, but the one person in particular that she butts heads with is Mrs. Danvers, who apparently really liked De Winter's first wife, Rebecca, whom we don't talk about, or they don't talk about rather. We never see Rebecca. We never have, like, we get descriptions of her, vague descriptions of her, but we never see her face throughout the entire um, film. So basically, we are left to imagine Rebecca. She's like the third man of Hitchcock, but we never see Rebecca. We only see her, her clothes, her room, the things around her, and of course her husband, her husband, and all that. And so she ends up, so Fontaine, lives there and tries to fit in, even though she's kind of more of a city girl. And she ends up meeting this one crazy guy who lives in like this lighthouse, who believes that Rebecca will come back after a time, and he's crazy. But every time she's mentioned to De Winter, Maxim like wants to not talk about her and all that, and he gets really angry when she's brought up. And so, one night, Mrs. Davers, like, tells her that she'll never be Rebecca, that Fontaine will never be Rebecca and all that. And so it's like, and so she ends up deliberately screwing her over by saying, oh, she have a costume party. Fontaine wants Maxim to have a costume party, and Danvers has her dress up in the last dress that Rebecca wore before she died at their last costume party. And so when Maxim sees her, he's like, get the hell out! What are you doing? Go away! You're pissing off you're ruining everything. And so in a fit of depression, Danvers sees she confronts Danvers on this, figuring out that Danvers knew full well that Maxim would react this way, and so Danvers tries to get her to jump, because she's like, you'll never amount to anything. Look out there. Why don't you jump? And just as she's about to probably say yes or no, these fireworks go off in the sky, and it signals that they found a wrecked ship out in the harbor, or out in the ocean or something, and they bring her in, and they figure that it's Rebecca, it's her body, who because they allude to the fact that she drowned early in the movie. And after confronting Maxim about it, he reveals that he was the one who killed her. He was the one who scuttled the boat. He put her on the boat and he scuttled her. Like he hated Rebecca, and he ended up like, it was basically, they got married as like a living arrangement, and she was having a baby with Jack, with her cousin Jack Favel's Favel, but they don't fall down. And so it's like this weird. This is where the story gets really crazy. But because the body isn't Rebecca, like, Maxim is called in to like testify against him, and so he's eventually accused of being a murderer. And Fontaine ends up fainting at the courtroom and being sent home and all that, or she ends up like trying to testify for him and defend him and all that. And meanwhile, Jack really wants him to go and all that, because even though he's kind of in it, and so Danvers like confesses to, like, says that there was a doctor who saw Rebecca, but the doctor says that Rebecca used an assumed name, which is Danvers and all that. And it gets really confusing around this point, but May's basically at the end, the ending is basically, apparently what happened was Rebecca was pregnant with Jack's child. I believe it was Jack's child. And she ended up trying to like convince Maxim to kill her by scuttling the boat, like by depressing him so hard that he would in turn scuttle the boat and kill her, which is like kind of like an indirect suicide, something like that. It's a little crazy, yeah. But basically the movie ends. However, the movie ends with Maxim and Frank Crawley, who's Maxim's friend and who owns the estate. driving back to Mandalay when they see light, a huge light, and they think it's dawn at first, but as they drive closer and closer, Maxim realizes that it's Mandalay, and Mandalay's on fire, and so and they get back there, the whole place is like a lit. It's like it's like just a blaze, and so he's worried about Fontaine, and they reunite. Yet Danvers is actually trapped in the building, and just as and the floor comes down and kills her, and the last thing you see is this R on the this monogrammed R on the pillowcase as it burns up, and that's how the movie ends. And yeah, so all right, let's talk about Hitchcock. Well, first of all, Hitchcock did his direction thing. He did the great direction. Some notable scenes, some notable shots I noticed were when they first arrive at Mandalay, and you see all the staff are standing there. It's very much like the birds. It very kind of really nicely precedes the birds. And there's some nice close-up shots of Fontaine when they're toward the end, but just before they reunite in the fire. Yeah, like the story was a little confusing at the end. The main motive and all that. But in the end, I mean, and Fontaine is honestly one of the weirder actresses. I mean, like, it was hard to. I mean, I guess she was trying to portray a very confused girl, very confused young girl. It never seemed like. It took her a long, long time for me to be convinced that she was in love with Maxim. Just because of her looks. Her looks were very. She had this look of just really dazed look. It's like she had a really hard time smiling, for a very long time. Actually all throughout the film. It's like the only time she really truly smiles is when she comes down in Rebecca's dress at the costume party. But yeah, so that was kind of a turn off for me. Just her weird acting. I didn't like the character or something. I'm not sure if that was part of the character or not, but whatever. It was weird. Didn't care for it too much. Laurence Olivier, of course, is being Laurence Olivier and pretty amazing. And of course, it's nice to see him in a film that he isn't directing and writing and producing and being all, I'm a big ass amazing star. And, just to see him in the starring role is enough. Yeah. And to see him not doing Shakespeare too. Yeah, so I think this might be our first or second Laurence Olivier film where he isn't doing. No, I think it's our second one. I think he was in Spartacus, I believe. Yeah, but anyway, so the movie Hitchcock, as far as directing goes, he nailed it. But yeah, no, it's just, the story is a little. This movie's a little long, but it could have been a few minutes shorter, 6 or 10 minutes shorter. Just to keep it a little under 10 minutes. I mean, I could have cut 10, 15 minutes out and it would have been perfect. But, yeah, but not too much, actually, as we'll get to when I talk about the radio broadcasts. So what do I give this film? Let's give it a B-. B. I'll give it a B. Like I said, B for just a little confusing plot and Fontaine's weird looks, and yeah. I'm going to get criticized for that, but whatever. So anyway, that's the movie B. Now, you can't see it right now, but I'm looking over here. I have a desktop over here right behind the camera, and I've pulled up the supplements disc, because I, for the love of God, can't remember all the crap I looked at in the last 10 hours or however long I've been watching this movie. Yeah, so the first disc of Rebecca is just the movie with commentary on it. The second disc is all the supplements. So I'm gonna use my mouse here. I'm gonna use the desktop here. So I'm gonna go through each section here and just look at the titles, and I'll try to relay to you what's on here, because reading the back of this isn't helping. That doesn't say anything. So it's split up into 4 sections. There's Dreams, which is apparently the the conception of Rebecca. Dreaming of Mandalay, which is about Daphne du what's her name? Daphne du Maurier. Picturization of a celebrated novel, which describes like the differences between some significant differences between the movie and the novel. The Search for I, which talks about like all the actresses they tried. We Intend to Make Rebecca, which is about censorship and fighting, kind of like arguing between David O. Selznick, the producer, and Alfred Hitchcock. Locations Research, which has like locations that were considered for Rebecca. Probably about like a half hour of screen tests for I, by Ann Baxter, Margaret Sullivan, Loretta Young, Vivian Lee, Joan Fontaine, and more Ann Baxter. Vivian Lee was probably the most interesting because Vivian Lee at the time was Laurence Olivier's lover or wife, and it was cool to see the two of them acting together. She would have worked. It seemed Laurence Olivier definitely seemed really comfortable with her, so that would have been kind of cool if they did they might have done a movie together. I don't know. Let's see, what else we got? A screen test. Oh no, we already did that. Lighting, makeup, and costume test, which shows Joan Fontaine doing like costume, and they talk about the lighting tests for the tests. And that's Dreams. Fruition is like the making of. It has like memos from David O. Selznick, which are long and like between studio heads and all that. A Curious Slanting Hand, which talks about the Rebecca's handwriting and how like different takes on her handwriting. Wardrobe Stills, which shows the stand-ins wearing Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine's clothing. Set Stills, picture number 110, Rebecca, which is just shows behind the scenes takes. Deleted luncheon scene, which is a deleted scene that was cut from the film, which wasn't never filmed, but they have the script and they have like a memo from David O. Selznick talking about why they cut it. And then a really interesting supplement, How Did You Like the Picture, which it says Rebecca was screened several times for Los Angeles, blah, 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 blah. Selznick tallied the results from questionnaires handed out after the screening. So it just basically shows, it's basically a bunch of questionnaires. Like, how did you like the picture? 181 said excellent, 74 said very good, 9 said fair, 0 said poor, 4 said no answer. And that was probably the most interesting because a lot of people have some really interesting examples. In fact, I mean, this review's already gone long, probably one of our longest so far. Let's talk about this one's. Oh, here's some cool comments. 2 people said for sound. 2 people said kissing too loud. Whistle sounds evident. 2 people said Fontaine speaks at one time with no sound. Olivier. 5 people say talk too fast at times. 3 cards didn't specifically complain of Olivier. 11, Olivier difficult to understand. Let's see. There's some good comments listed according to sequence. "Quote unquote eyes voiceover Mandalay spoils picture because they knew heroine lived through it all." That's kind of an interesting conversation. Death of Rebecca should have been told sooner. For 4 people said that. 2 people said Mrs. Van Hopper does too much dry talking, could rewrite beginning. Let's see. 1 person said Olivier wasn't attractive, mysterious, or anything. When Olivier's love for Fontaine shouldn't be held until the end. Joe Giles tells it opening a scene inappropriate. Oh, I don't remember that one. What else? These are just really interesting, so that's why I really want to keep these. I want to read you these guys. Coroner is off. 1 person said time on clock in courtroom is wrong. But there's some that were good. Oh yeah. Miscellaneous comments. 2. Why wasn't Fontaine's hair fixed more attractively? 1. Why isn't I's name revealed in picture? Well, only 1 really. 2. Would have liked to have seen 1 picture of Rebecca. Yeah, so those were interesting. Those are pretty interesting. Okay, number 3. Ballyhoo. This section has passion, frustration, mystery, which shows publicity stills, posters, ad flicks, most glamorous ghost in history, which has like a fashion layout of Rebecca in Vogue magazine. The reshoot trailer, some silent clips from the 13th Annual Academy Awards, a 7-minute interview with Hitchcock on Rebecca from like a French interview that was done, I think, for a book. Some interviews with Joan Fontaine and June Anderson done in 1986 by Leonard J. Leff, which is like one of the biggest white Criterion guys, and I do mean white. Oh God, that guy he's one of those Criterion guys. Anyway. Then finally we have broadcast, which is probably the longest to get through. Basically, there are three different adaptations of Rebecca. One for the Mercury Theater, which was actually the first Mercury Theater before it was called the Mercury Theater, or after. It was actually is Orson Welles doing the Campbell Soup program, and it was his first program. He starred with Marianne. What was her name? Margaret Sullivan, who actually did one of the screen tests, and so they actually did the play together. He played De Winter, and it's pretty interesting adaptation. It was the first and only one done before the movie. It was during that time that he announced that Selznick's doing a movie for Rebecca, and I hope they do it right, and blah blah blah. But it's really interesting because there's so many commercials, and they actually have an interview with Daphne du Maurier. I have to keep remembering her name at the end through like a shortwave radio and all that. She actually gets cut off. She actually cuts off the interview when Margaret Sullivan asks her what the name of the actress is, and they joke that the name of the actress is Mrs. Maxim de Winter. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Like Orson Welles actually taking like a light comic relief at the end of the play. But yeah, it's really interesting, like how much they have to cut out, because the plays are only an hour long. So it's interesting how much they have to cut out. Like for instance, they cut out. I think one thing that I really wish they had kind of cut in that was really interesting was a line where Fontaine like proudly declares, "I am Mrs. De Winter now," and the music swells and it like explodes in this thing, like a little mini explosion. And they cut that out, and it's kind of just like one of the scene where I think Fontaine actually like kind of takes charge, and realizes that she's Miss De Winter, so she isn't just this woman who's like afraid to kind of live there, she actually is trying to live there unafraid and all that stuff. But yeah, they have to, of course, they have to cut a lot of the courtroom scene. They have to really imply that, she fainted and all that. And in fact, I think on the original one, they actually cut out the whole idea of Fontaine. I'm still going to call her Fontaine, or Sullivan, I guess in this case, Sullivan, being at Mandalay while De Winter is in town. Because in the end, they ride back together. De Winter and Sullivan ride back together to the burning Mandalay Manor. The other one, and so it's an interesting adaptation. I think it's a little weak because it suffers from so much being cut because of all the commercials they had to do, the really elongated Campbell's Soup commercials, which didn't bother me because Campbell's Soup is delicious, and I love old radio commercials, so it's great. But the second one is the 1941 Lux Radio Theater, because you knew Lux was going to get their hands on Rebecca. Twice, actually. The first one had the great Ronald Colman as De Winter, and Ida Lupino as Lupino. And I love Ronald Colman, just as a side. I haven't honestly seen anything in him, but I've listened to enough Jack Benny program to, like, every time he's on, I'm just like, oh my god, Ronald Colman. Because I know he's going to rip Jack a new one every time. So yeah, he's great. He's great, and I was like, "Oh my god, wait, it's Ron Coleman!" Oh my god! So he was a pretty cool De Winter. Yeah, and they add a little more. They definitely based by this point. They kind of used the movie as the jumping off point. And in fact, I think a lot of the Lux Radio theaters were basically just radio adaptations of the movies. Yeah, so it's not bad. And then the second one. 1950s, the Lux Radio Theater, Laurence Olivier reprising his role as De Winter with Vivien Leigh as Leigh. as Mrs. De Winter. I could have called her Mrs. De Winter. Yeah, but basically, pretty much almost the same read through. Like it's like by this point, like I've listened to them almost in a row, so it's like basically listening to the same goddamn story over, over, over again, until finally it was all over. Yes. So that concludes my extra special long review of Rebecca. Good God, I don't think we've had a review this long. So, like I said, oh God, and I looked on Amazon because all three of these movies, Rebecca, Spellbound, and Notorious, are out of print. $104 this one costs. The other ones aren't too bad. I think Spellbound's like $30 and Notorious is like $15, $20. Maybe 30, I don't remember. But $104, and I guess rightfully so, considering all the crap they put on this, and I do. But if you like the movie, if you love this movie, you think it's the most glamorous film, like they all kept toting it as the most glamorous film, B. Anyway. Alright, so, thank God. So, our Hitchcockapalooza continues tomorrow with Spellbound. And then Tuesday, 27th with Notorious. And yeah, and then that'll be that, and then probably Thursday, if I find some time, we will get to the supplements for The Rock. Finally knock out these supplements, just because. Either that, or we'll do we might actually do The Vanishing too, because like I said, it's only 2 interviews, and depending on how long they are, like I said, depending on how long they are, I'll probably do them, same day, or maybe I'll do them along with Spellbound or Rebecca, Notorious, whatever. And then, of course, next week we have the director trio, the great director trio. We got Rashomon next Sunday, and then I got Wild Strawberries finally, so we'll pick some Wild Strawberries then, and then 8.5. So we're moving, we're making progress at last. And then I finally put a hold on the next 3 for next week. Children of Paradise, Last Wave, and That Obscure Object of Desire. So those will be coming very soon, I hope. And yeah, so that's it. So that's finally it. You can all go back to your lives now, because we're done with Hitchcock for tonight. Thanks for watching. Morals. Don't let your wife trick you into wanting to kill her. If you fall in love with a guy, show it. Don't just look confused. And don't be crazy and set a house on fire. And don't wear dresses that remind your husband of his dead wife. There you go. And don't faint in courtrooms. And what else? And don't call actresses in 1986 and be all white in Criterion. Okay? Don't do that either. Okay, that's enough. Those are enough morals. Live on. Take them with a grain of salt and pepper, and then some. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we will see you tomorrow for dropping it. We'll see you tomorrow for Spellbound. And until then, good evening.